Okay. Welcome to the editorial board. It is Wednesday, March 5th. Would you please tell us a little bit about yourself, the office you seek, and then we'll start asking questions. 30 minutes will just fly by. So, welcome.
Thank you. My name's Curt Clawson. Nice to be here. Bonita Springs. And folks moved down to Southwest Florida to Hickory Island 20 years ago. Might have been 21. And so I've been coming down a long time. And bought property myself on Hickory Island in the mid-2000, 2005 or 6, right in there. And so been a landowner. And then when a little over 2 years ago, when I retired from my position as CEO of the world's largest maker of wheels for cars and trucks, I came down to be with my folks, so we both have a place within a quarter of a mile each other on Hickory Island. And I'm here for the duration, and of course did not have plans to be running for Congress at the time that I came down, obviously. And even until the congressman got into trouble, had no plans to run for Congress. I had not ruled out local office, by the way, and had been active in the Bonita Springs area in the DRGR debate, and I'm a member of the BBA, Bonita Beach Association. So I've been active in local affairs since I've been here, and tried to be an active participant in Bonita.
So what drew you to this race at this time, Curt?
I think that the time is good in our country for folks in Washington to have, with my background and my skill set. And I think, and to elaborate on that, as we spoke in our interview, I think that Washington needs a turnaround. The finances are broken, and the government is too big in our lives. And I think folks that have made tough choices and have lived through analogous situations, if you will, I think more of that, the better in Washington right now. And I think that that would have a meaningful impact on us here in Florida as well, by the way. And so I think that in my case, or others that have been through similar things like me, I think that that would be good to have that background knowledge and leadership in Washington right now.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Describe what you mean by the tough times you've been through. What?
Right. So when I was CEO of the world's largest wheel maker, I took over a company with more debt than sales. Now imagine that for a minute. More debt than sales. And we don't get rid of that kind of debt in a year. It takes a while, and it takes some tough choices, and it takes some tough actions, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I think our industry in general has had to go through some, in a highly cyclical industry like the automotive industry, a lot of the guys in leadership positions have to go through some tough times when the market crashes. And when the market crashes and a company like ours has a huge amount of debt, we don't have the margin of error that everybody else has. So even though I did not create the debt, and my team did not, when the market goes south and that debt is on the books, got pretty big problems to deal with.
What year was it when you took over with this?
I took over in 2001.
Okay. So this is before the famous
Yeah,
economic collapse of 2009.
We had two separate turnarounds. We had a turnaround in 2001 that we became involved in, where we had a restatement of the books, and the company was in a mess, losing money, and had some big problems. We got it through that, got the company on stable territory. I did not eliminate all the debt, eliminated a big chunk of it.
Was there a bankruptcy involved in that?
There was a Chapter 11 in
a reorganization.
A reorganization in 2001.
Okay.
Yes, and then another in 2009.
Okay.
A prearranged Chapter 11 in 2009. 2001 is what the industry would call a free fall. I came in, and immediately it was pretty well understood that we weren't going to make it. 2009 in Detroit, in Detroit across the industry was a time of, if you can find financing, you can get through the process. But a lot of the companies didn't make it. And I think one of the things that we did that set us apart was we were able to gain the confidence of our suppliers and our customers and our employees, and go out and get financing, private financing from banks, in order to keep the company going through the downturn, which was pretty difficult to do.
You had a good career before this. Why would anybody take a job where you had more debt than sales?
I did not know the depth of the problem.
Wow.
I thought I did my due diligence. I knew the debt load was high, but I thought the company was making money. And so you have one of those pivotal life decisions where you say, okay, I've been here a couple months. Do you turn and run? Or do you see if you can work it out for the sake of all constituencies? And that, in the fall of 2001, I had to make that choice. And I can't say there's a right and wrong choice to that. And I knew that it was going to be a long, long, long slog. It was not going to have a solution in a quarter or a year or two. It was going to take a while. And we had to have our gut check, and every person has to make those decisions on their own. And I decided to hang in for the sake of the company and the employees.
We're talking about the company, just for our viewers. The name of the company is?
Hayes Lemmerz.
Hayes
Lemmerz.
Thank you.
Is that based in Detroit?
Based in Northville, Michigan.
How many employees at its peak, would you say?
14,000. Well, peak when I was there.
Sure.
Now, if you went back peak to the Model T, it probably had 100,000 at one point. As you know, automotive processes have gotten more and more efficient over the decades.
And
so
then,
we had a master problem here. I mean, we had a problem that was every bit as big as my capabilities, my team's capabilities, for sure.
So, how many employees does it have now?
I'm going to say it's been constant at 6,000 to 7,000 for 7 or 8 years.
But the company is stable.
Stable, profitable. Became profitable almost immediately, because if you recall the downturn, those companies that made it to 2009 were okay. In 2010, 2011, we had good years. And then in 2012, the owner sold the company, and they did very well in the deal. So everybody walked away with smiles. We got an owner that didn't have any layoffs, stable owner. Company goes on, and everybody's okay.
but you'll be criticized, and probably already have been, for taking a company from 14,000 employees to 6,000 employees.
Well,
folks will say Curt Clawson cut jobs.
I want to say that much of that was just selling divisions that weren't wheels. And I can't, but thousands of those folks were brake business, control arm business, suspension business. One of the things that we did was narrow the focus on what we were good at, which was wheels. So I can't even give you the number. I'd have to go back and research. But much of what we did was sell off the non-core businesses, which is pretty classic in a turnaround. Mm-hmm. Did we have some layoffs in parts of the world? Yes, but we also hired in parts of the world. So, it's not just you going from 14,000 to 6,000 through layoffs. That would be totally inaccurate. Clearly there were some layoffs, but what's also common in our industry is the volumes go up and down, and the workforce, of course, is flexed depending on what's going on in the global market.
So often in campaigns like this, the core issue, in my opinion, comes down to trust, where you'll have candidates who sometimes have stands on issues that are quite similar to one another. And the voters will look, okay, between these 3 or 4 candidates, which one can I trust to get the job done? In other words, to take the promises and to actually deliver the goods. Why should the voters cast their lot with Curt Clawson?
I think number one, my family background speaks for itself. Not just me, but my parents and who they are and what my brothers and sisters are. And the kind of life that my family, not just me, but my family has led. Number two, I think my professional career speaks for a guy that doesn't bail out when there's problems, and somebody that's been vetted pretty carefully. Boards of directors of publicly traded companies tend to vet folks pretty well.
Okay. Is there a third
And
reason?
number three is I'm not a career politician. I mean, I'm not in this for a job as well. You know, I'm not making money on this. And I'm at my age, I'm not about to have a long political career.
How old are you?
54. And I believe in term limits, so, you know. What possible motivation would I?
Yeah, you mentioned you're retired. Are you doing anything professionally now?
No, only
Business interests,
no. I stepped off of for-profit boards and basically, you know, I'm involved with the YMCA and their swim program and some stuff like that, but not anything that's.
Okay. You don't have a side business or
No.
anything?
My parents are in their mid-80s, and you know, I'm here with them.
You have any other family here?
No, just my mom and dad, who are both alive.
I know you've released a economic plan. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got a couple questions.
Sure,
Probably
of
after
course.
you go.
I think that there's a recovery right around the corner if we were to pull several levers that could get it going, and I don't think it's complicated to understand. It gets back to the foundation of my economic philosophy, which is good jobs follow investment, and investment is competed for in a global market, and and investment dollars follow competitiveness.
Good jobs follow
Competitiveness,
investment.
if your economy is competitive, it will draw investment, and investment brings good jobs. And governments can't create that. Government can't create great jobs. Competitiveness does. And so I think that if you look at my economic plan, the idea is to increase competitiveness, both for small businesses and large, by the way, in order to produce great jobs. And I just think if you reduce and simplify the tax code, particularly for businesses, small and large, and you shut down some of this regulation that really handcuffs folks, by the way, particularly small businesses, because they don't have the manpower to cut through the red tape. Large businesses do. They have lawyers that help them cut through things. But what all these regulations do is tend to protect the big guys, because the small guys can't get through the red tape in order to satisfy the government and therefore get their business going. I believe that to the core. And so I think that this combination of tax cuts, simplification, and deregulation would help small companies in particular, but also large companies, successfully compete for capital, which therefore will drive jobs. And I think if more folks understand that in Washington, instead of constantly harping on redistribution, fairness is an important word in our society for sure, but competitiveness also needs to be talked about, because competitiveness produces jobs. And I think good jobs in our country don't have to go away.
Can I ask you about jobs?
Sure.
Some employers, even in Southwest Florida, will tell you they can't get the numbers and quality of skilled workers that they need. And they have to look outside the country for prospective talent, especially in tech fields. Do you agree with that? I mean, have you sensed that in your own business world? And if so, how would that carry over to your views on immigration?
I never had that problem in our business. In the automotive industry, there are a lot of great tool and die makers in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. It just was not a problem. the problem was in our industry was not lack of skill set. The problem was lack of opportunity. And so, I would be presumptuous to talk too much about what's going on in San Jose and Silicon Valley because it's not my game. But I know in our industry, the problem was not lack of skills, it was lack of jobs for great mechanics, pipe fitters, and tool and die makers. And I just think that those are the kind of folks, and I think there's folks down here that would benefit from a more vibrant economy. Sorry to take you off from where you want to go.
That's perfect. I'm just letting you, giving you a shot at that.
I have read the same thing, but I don't want to pontificate too much unless I knew more about that particular data.
I'm just aware of a high-tech startup or two from guys who used to work at, he went to school at FGCU, and they decided to apply their skills in their own business. And they would grow if they could, but they don't have the people they need.
Is that here in Florida or in California?
It's in Bonita.
Right.
Yeah,
So I think that that's something that clearly, if I'm elected, I'd have to dig into.
just asking.
No, I think it's a legitimate point.
You talked about reducing, simplifying tax code, lessening regulations. What about government spending overall? Is that, I believe that's addressed in your economic plan.
Right. I think, well, we have a two-piece plan, and I was asked about it on his show earlier today. I think the first half is, look, let's get the economy moving in terms of job production. The second half is, let's cut the deficit. And that's why I have adopted, as many other legislators have, the penny plan as a simple way to get that done. In business terms, we always say, how much, what percent.
Oh, sorry, time out. Okay, we're okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Technical interruption, my
Sorry.
fault.
In business terms, look, 1%, Pete.
Pete, okay. Do you know what that means?
No.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, I think 1% is very doable. And, I just think if you did a hiring freeze and and just start there and then have different branches of the government figure out where to get 1%, I think they could do it.
What about entitlements? I mean, government spending, a lot of it is stuff, hiring freeze, you could cut 1% there, but entitlement spending, Social Security specifically, is locked in. People are going to reach that age, and they are entitled to those benefits they've been paying in for all those years. That's a big chunk of the federal budget.
Right.
How do you address that?
I think that we have to look at restructuring Social Security in order to save it. But I don't think you do it on the backs of folks that are currently retired or anywhere close to being retired. But I think you do have to look at the actuarial picture here and say, okay, for future generations, what do we need to do to come up with a realistic plan in order to save it?
Do you have thoughts about that? Or
Not yet. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways. There's more than one way to corner a pig, right? And I think you can get at some things there. I just think that that's something that, and folks are younger folks are used to paying into 401s and other things. So I think that there's some options here that are realistic for people in their 20s and 30s that we ought to be able to get our arms around. What I don't think you can do, of course, is change the game when folks have already retired or getting close to that and then have this huge personal problem. That wouldn't work in your families, wouldn't work with my brothers and sisters or my parents, and it's not fair anyway. I mean, all of these things we have to look at with an eye to what fiscally needs to be done, but also an eye to fairness. And I won't, having been through turnarounds, I can't say that you can't say there's a turnaround without some pain. You got to make some tough choices, but you also have to weigh the fairness thing as well. And so that's why I say you can't touch seniors now, obviously, and I can't imagine that anybody would.
Talking about changes, the words repeal Obamacare come up a lot in this campaign.
Yes.
Can you really do that? I mean, it's a great soundbite. It gets attention. I mean, it works. But can you really do it? And what would you say to the millions of people who have already taken advantage of the program? I mean, some people can get through the website. I mean, they're out there. So what do you say to them?
Those.
So what do you say?
I think the following, that in terms of whether you can get it repealed or not, let me speak to that, okay? I think the group of folks in Congress that are figuring out that this is a lead airplane, I think that's a bigger and bigger group every election. And so I think it will be Democrats as well as Republicans, by the way. And so, because I think the financial underpinnings don't work. So I think the cost problem for the government will get bigger, and the cost problem for the consumer will get bigger. And the fairness problem will get bigger because people lose doctors when doctors drop out because they don't like price controls. Price controls cause shortages in any market. Obamacare is price controls, which drives doctors out of the services, and then people don't get the service that they deserve. And so I think the underpinnings here are really, really shaky. And I think that more and more doctors will leave the program, and more people will be heading to emergency room to get stuff done, which is the most expensive place to do it.
So you're saying it's not the politics that will overtake Obamacare, it's the economics, and that will drive everything else.
And the fairness. I think economics and fairness, and by the way, the Constitution, because I think Obama, when he decides which parts of the law to enforce, I think he's ignoring the Constitution. So I think you have here a constitutional issue, a fairness issue, and an economic issue. And that as time goes by, Congress wakes up to that and will have to react. That's my opinion, because I don't think that the plan will get better. I think it gets worse. And as it gets worse, democracy then needs to do its work, which is influence lawmakers to repeal, and I think Republicans and Democrats will get to that. It's got a constitutional issue, a fairness issue, and a cost issue. And the cost issue hits not only the government, but the consumer.
About immigration, what is the proper course on immigration? There's folks in the Republican Party that say a large comprehensive bill that takes on border security and a host of other issues. There's another faction that seems to want to do just border security first. Where do you fall on that?
I think that in my own business career, I did not have a habit of renegotiating commitments that weren't kept in the first place. And I just think that the current laws, including the border, ought to be respected before you move to the next step. And I think, as long as this president's in place, I just think that's a doubtful proposition. But I have a hard time, I would have a hard time negotiating with the president when he picks parts of the immigration laws and tells ICE not to enforce them. So I'm a pretty tough spot on that. I just think the current laws need to be respected before we talk about new laws. And you could bring that up with the Second Amendment. You could bring it up with immigration. I just think where the laws aren't being enforced, I think it's hard to go to the next step.
Let me ask you the immigration question in this way. Who should get to stay? Who's here now?
Well, you have another fairness issue, right? Because you have a fairness issue around those that come legally and have done the proper process, and those who have not.
Right.
Right. So, if someday there is a solution, you've got to respect those that have kept the law.
But your solution would be, if you were here as a bona fide citizen, you should get to stay, but if you're less than a citizen, you should go.
I am not advocating mass deportation, because I don't know that that's a practical solution.
That's why I asked.
What I am saying is, let's keep the law. Let's start by enforcing the laws that we have before we move to that conversation. The conversation you're doing now is you're moving it. Where do we go from here? Enforce the laws, and then we can have that conversation. Otherwise, it's just purely I just wouldn't have the conversation as long as we have a president that chooses not to enforce the current law.
Trust.
Trust. I mean, I don't.
As a businessman, you sound like you're very aware of concepts like the cost of things, and things cost a certain amount, and that's what you should pay for them. How does the government, or what is the government's role in flood insurance relative to that? You live on Hickory Island,
Yeah.
right there.
Right.
I'm assuming
We
fairly
live-
flood prone.
Yeah, we
What does your
understand it up
insurance?
close and personal, baby.
What does your insurance look like? Does the government subsidize it? Should the government subsidize it?
They don't subsidize mine.
Okay.
I don't take it. And so, in my case, I don't have it. I think that this is one of those examples where it's federal government involvement, makes things worse instead of better in terms of the water in Florida. And I'm speaking in generality about the water in Florida. Okay? And therefore, I think that, in this issue, I'm with the governor. I mean, I think that they helped create this problem, so they shouldn't abandon Florida. I mean, the federal government should not abandon Florida, whether it's the reservoir or whether it's flood insurance, because I think that they created a lot of this problem. We are where we are because of the federal government participation and intervention. So I think that to just let the rates go sky high as if, we're suddenly going to, abandon ship here, I just don't agree with that. And with respect to the reservoir, the same thing. I mean, whatever the solution is, they should help pay for it, because the Army Corps is a good part of the problem. So I think that's a thorny issue, but I think the federal government owes us a fair shake on this because they've been involved since day one. And so just to abandon ship and say, hey, you guys are on your own, rates got to go where they are after they've been involved all these years, I'm not for that at all. Again, you have the fairness issue where things have been, it's like the Social Security. You can't just suddenly say, hey, we're breaking the deal with y'all. You know what I mean? I think the same way with flood insurance. You just can't break deals with folks that you've had commitments with.
You mentioned the FEMA subsidy, and you said you don't take it. Is it available to you?
The flood insurance?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't take it.
But it's available. You could have
It's
it
available, yeah,
if you-
of course.
if you
And
decided.
I'm not criticizing those that do. I mean, I think most people, a lot of people on the shore here in Florida are not wealthy. You can't just leave them out to dry on this issue. It's not just wealthy folks living by the beach that could get flooded. So I think I'm with the governor on this. I just think that the federal government ought to keep their commitments and not change the deal.
How are we on time, Brent?
See 2809.
Y'all running out of time.
Okay. Well, okay, I didn't mean to let this be the last question, but I need to get this in here. I'm trying to ask all the candidates in your race this pointed question in view of what we saw happen to Mr. Radel. And that is there anything in your present or your past that if it were to come to light, it would embarrass the community, disappoint your constituents, or affect your ability to lead and to deliver on your promises as a public servant? Is there anything we should know about now rather than find out later?
I've never been arrested. I've never participated in illegal activity where I wouldn't be here. And I've been vetted so many times before. I've never been intoxicated, and I've never been under the influence of illegal drugs, not once. And I've never been intoxicated with alcohol, not once. And I've never been arrested, don't have a DUI, never gambled to any meaningful degree, so never been investigated.
But there's nothing the public needs to know about you that they don't want to know about later, and they have a chance
Well, I
to
mean,
learn
everybody
about
has a personal life, but no, the answer is no. In my case, no.
Okay. Is that a fair question?
I mean, it's a little unfair because, I mean, we all have things you say embarrass us. I mean, we all have done things that embarrass us.
But that would affect your ability
No,
to lead
of
as
course
a
not.
congressperson.
And the answer to that is of course not.
Okay.
But, you know, everybody has their worst moment where they lose their temper, or, you know what I mean? We've all been in college, so if you say, yeah, but have you ever done anything crazy? Well, then you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think anything that approaches what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I think we're out of time. Would you like to have the last word?
No, I just appreciate y'all having me here.
Okay, thank you for your time.
You're
Thank you.
very welcome.